Everyone who's been part of a bartender Facebook group, in fact, everyone who's been part of any group on Facebook, knows the thread. A seemingly innocuous post, maybe by someone with a little less knowledge than some others in the group, it blows up and suddenly there are 1,000 side arguments in the comments and people getting blocked left, right and centre. Well, a little while ago now, the offending object of such a post in a group back in Scotland was the French Martini. So, why did the conversation get so heated? And can you make a good French Martini? This episode is part of a series produced in partnership with A+, which is a new website for and about the hospitality industry. And because of that, I get to be as geeky as I like on all things bar and booze, so I hope that you'll enjoy. We all know that not everything called a martini is a martini, at least in the traditional terms of gin and vermouth. Modern bartenders like to lament the dark ages of cocktails where every luminously hued and sticky sweet libation in a martini glass took the moniker, and the French Martini is very much a child of those times. It was invented in the 1980s at one of the booming bars owned by Keith McNally, which includes Balthazar in New York, but the precise place and inventor seems to have been lost in the sands of time, so if you're out there and you see this, please put your hand up. This is very much a chicken and the egg situation though. What came first, the public's love of so-called disco drinks or the bartenders putting them on their menu? While liqueurs and fruit brandies have been around for hundreds of years as a preservation method, the 80s saw a lot of new brands and products hit the market. De Kuyper may have been around since the 1600s, but in 1984 they launched their Peachtree Schnapps and saw their turnover double. Malibu was also put on this earth to ruin many a pina colada, in my honest opinion, in the early 1980s, and then in 1981, a French raspberry liqueur with an iconic spherical bottle design hit the shelves. Chambord. These products were young and sexy, they were packaged and advertised well, they played perfectly with 80s music and fashion, and a lot of them are absolutely not bad products for what they set out to do. Cocktails need sweetness, and they provide that in a fun and interesting way. Because how many people are really going to sit at home or in their bar juicing red and black raspberries, adding Madagascan vanilla essence and Moroccan citrus peel essence and honey and herbal extracts? I mean, I guess nowadays that's actually just a casual Sunday for a keen bartender, what with the emphasis that we have on house-made ingredients. But really, why wouldn't you let someone else do that work for you, especially if you had an 80s hairdo to upkeep? Plus, they were cool, in the same way that we're all now obsessed with kombucha and kefir. And it was our craft cocktail forebears who really pushed this drink. Simon Difford, a titan of the modern bartending revolution, says in his history of the French Martini that Dick Bradsell, another really well-known name who has given us many modern classics like the Espresso Martini, made him his first one and he gushed about it. His world famous Class magazine, which was really the first sort of by bartenders for bartenders publication as far as I'm aware. It was newly founded and it needed support, so he approached both Absolut Vodka and Chambord for advertising. In his own words, the French Martini helped establish my magazine and I helped establish the French Martini. Difford went on to create Difford's Guide, which is an amazing bartending resource, which I know many bartenders refer to religiously. So really, we all have a lot to thank the French Martini for. So, back to the Facebook controversy. The post asked for inspiration for French Martini art, or the kind of swirls made on top of the foam with a red syrup of some kind. The replies were split largely into two camps. Those that feel that this is tacky and that the French Martini is a throwback whose continuing popularity is an affront to modern bartending sensibilities, which preaches minimalism, fresh ingredients and scientific technique, none of which the French Martini is particularly guilty of. And those that feel that we as bartenders should put egos aside and cater to its continuing popularity with a smile on our faces, getting as many swirly French Martini art pics on people's Instas as they want. I found it an interesting microcosm of the crossroads that we seem to be at in hospitality. Are we here to guide the public to our idea of good taste and what we think drinks and drinks culture should look like? Or are we here to serve them in a more traditional sense of the word, providing the drinks and experiences that they expect and just concentrating on making guests happy? I certainly don't have the answer, and I do think that it's something that each venue needs to figure out on their own according to their concept and the atmosphere that they want to create and their clientele. I also do think that it's important that when a venue doesn't do certain things that might ordinarily be expected of a bar for reasons of sort of curating their space, this is totally fair, but it needs to be communicated gently and without making anyone feel ignorant. At Bomba, I like to take the no but approach. So we might not have certain products or be able to make certain drinks which don't sort of suit our style of service, but we'll always try and get you something close and hopefully maybe even introduce you to a new favorite. And full disclaimer, we actually usually don't have Chambord on the bar, so our French martinis are generally made as more of an approximation using creme de cassis, although I guess I might have to change that after this video. Anyway, enough philosophizing. It's time to answer the all-important question: is the French martini a good drink? The problem with this drink is balance. Chambord is sweet, pineapple juice out of a bottle is sweet, and vodka really just provides an alcoholic backbone rather than balancing it out. So, what to do? Some recipes substitute the vodka for gin, which provides dryness and lift through sort of woody and citrus botanicals. But this seems a bit of a step too far for me because no one except your grandma was drinking gin in the 80s. You could use fresh pineapple juice, and that's certainly an option in bars with an industrial juicer who pump out a lot. But if you only make the odd one, it's not really a practicable solution. Plus, fresh pineapples are really variable in terms of sweetness and acid, so you'd have to tweak your ratios each time, and it's hard to get it consistent. You can add citrus, and I've had some success with this, but it is introducing another flavor which doesn't rightfully belong in this drink and bringing it more into the realms of a sour, which isn't exactly what the guest ordered. Well, you've all heard of acid-adjusted orange juice, right? I mean, maybe not, but anyway, it's a thing. Enter acid-adjusted pineapple juice, except I'm definitely not actually that fancy. So basically what I do is I make a pineapple shrub. You can see the full technique and recipe for that here, but all you have to do is chop up a pineapple and cover it in sugar and add some vinegar. Preferably pineapple vinegar, but apple cider vinegar will totally work as well. And then overnight, the juice leaches out of the pineapple and it forms a syrup, but with the acid from the vinegar and the fresh pineapple cutting through the sweetness. Using this to make up a small amount of the pineapple juice, sort of part of this recipe, just brightens it all up with a fresher pineapple flavor and some acid. This method also works really well with the pina colada, which I found out working at Union Electric here in Melbourne and totally stole this idea from, so thanks Hugh. It's consistent as you can tweak each batch of shrub depending on the sweetness of the pineapple that you used, and it just lasts a lot longer than fresh juice. There are a few different schools of thought on the ratios of the French martini. Back in Glasgow, I learned it as 1-1-2, so equal parts vodka and Chambord, and then 2 parts pineapple juice. Nowadays, I do tend to bump up the vodka as it keeps it kind of cleaner, but it's definitely fun to have a play around and see how the drink changes with different formulations. So, let's get making. All right, so let's get started with the star of the show here. So Chambord is, the original, and so I felt like I definitely had to stick with that today. I did manage to find a cute little baby bottle, which is quite nice because the big one I actually find quite hard to hold. But you can also definitely use something like a creme de cassis or creme de mûre, just really any kind of berry liqueur will definitely give you an approximation. So 20 ml of the Chambord. And then our little 15 ml of pineapple shrub. 45 ml of pineapple juice. And the pineapple juice is going to be what's going to give you that signature nice and fluffy head on there. And then 40 ml of vodka. It doesn't really matter too much. As I said, it's just kind of providing like a nice clean backbone. I like the grain shaker one, which is just from nearby here. They've got a couple of different ones. So this one's actually made with wheat, so has like almost a slight vanilla note, which works really nicely. Then I'm just gonna grab my martini glass out of the fridge or the freezer. It definitely has to be a V-shaped in honor of the 80s and martinis in general, I think. Fill your shaker tin with ice. Then pop your tins together. Make sure they're lined up nice and straight and shake as hard as you can. All right, now, hand in my heart, I have never actually tried French martini art before, but I feel like given the inspiration for this episode, I felt like it was something that I should give a little go today. So I've got my raspberry syrup here in a little squeezy bottle. I think I'm going to keep it quite abstract. Then I'm just going to take a little skewer. And then it's covered with little love hearts. I mean, look, it's definitely not as impressive as some of the ones that I've seen, but I like it. It's understated. And then my usual garnish is just a couple of little raspberries on a skewer. You can just go nicely on the edge of the glass. And there we have a French martini. I guess I'd better give this a little try and see if I've managed to redeem it. Now, one thing I am glad has kind of died is martini glasses, because I'm really not coordinated and this spills very easily. I mean, it's just fun. It's super fruity. It tastes like raspberry. It's obviously a little bit sweet. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that's what you want from a drink, you know. I definitely don't think I could drink it all night, but you've got that little bit of acid. It's quite clean, just because there's that bit more vodka. It doesn't, it doesn't kind of stick around your mouth too much, which is what you want. Obviously, sometimes I've had ones which obviously use a lot of syrup or potentially not as good quality a liqueur that you get that kind of mouth coating thing, and that's definitely not what you want. But yeah, this is just like all berry and fun, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. So is it my favorite drink in the world? No. But is it a bad drink? Also no, if you give it a bit of love. It's fruity and fluffy and frivolous, and look, just one sip starts Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun playing in my head, which is frankly an energy we need more of in our lives after the past couple of years. Thank you again to A+ for partnering with me on this episode. It's one that I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. So now you know, disco never dies.